Minecraft The Village by Max Brooks. Introduction. This is Summer, Guy's more practical companion. I'm writing this part in order to give Guy more time to prep his kit for our next journey. Don't worry, it's still his story, although I'll be writing another bit later. I'll also be writing about all the new lessons we've learned from this adventure because, just like Guy's last 2 books, there was a lot to learn. And if you haven't read the last 2 books, well, that's what this introduction is for. Just know that, a while back, Guy popped into this strange, blocky world with no memory and no idea how to survive. And he spent the first book on an island learning how to do just that. And I don't mean just figuring out fire or tools, but figuring himself out. How to think and act and, well, just be a fully rounded person, so to speak. And of all the life lessons he'd learned on that island, the last one was that he'd have to keep going. Growth doesn't come from a comfort zone. He's fond of saying, but from leaving it. So he set out to discover more about this world and perhaps the way home. He paddled across the sea, bumped into a new frozen land, and eventually bumped into me. Like Guy, I'd also popped blindly into Right Anglia, or whatever it's called, and had to fight to survive. I didn't collect any earth-shattering revelations though. As I said, I'm the more practical, no-nonsense type, while Guy tends to think and talk about everything. A lot. Our initial meeting didn't go swimmingly at first. We had a devilish time learning how to be friends. But through adventures in my mountain palace and below it in the nether, we became inseparable. That was why, when it came time for Guy to keep moving on, I made the difficult choice to go with him. And that's where the story begins, on the first steps of our new journey. Over to you, Guy. Chapter 1. Are we headed in the right direction? Summer asked me this the moment we stepped out of her under-mountain fortress. It was a good question, and I wish I had a good answer. I don't know, I shrugged, but this direction led me to you, so it seems as good as any. We were heading due west, crunching over the snow-covered Tiga with the frigid wind at our backs. Swimming this way brought me to my island, I continued, and when I finally left, paddling this way brought me to you. Can't argue with that, Summer nodded, then focused on the land ahead, declared, we've got a lot of ground to cover before nightfall. Our plan for day 1 was to traverse this patch of taiga, then the forest, then camp at its edge before setting out across the next taiga. Day 2 would end at the jungle, the furthest Summer has ever been from her home base, and beyond that was the great unknown. It was a simple plan, and very doable provided we didn't run into any trouble. But it hadn't started snowing, which cut down our visibility, hiding any early morning creeper or other night mob lucky enough to be sheltering in the shade of a lone tree. That's why Summer didn't say anything more, not just because she was done pondering her decision, which she was, but also to concentrate on any potential hazards. Surface mobs weren't the only danger out here. There were also these patches of thin camouflage snow traps, like the kind that had fallen through on my first night in this continent. Just thinking about it made me shiver. The covered hole, the freezing pond, the skeleton shooting from the darkness. More of these natural threats had to be out there, along with the possibility of new ones. This world was always changing. It had happened at least twice since meeting Summer. New animals, new plants, and in the case of the nether, entirely new environments that had nearly gotten us both killed. Had there been any other recent changes to the taiga? If there were, we wouldn't have seen them. We'd been so obsessed with electrifying the mountain with redstone lamps that we hadn't ever been outside for a plunge in the nearby ice river. If the surface world had changed, we'd find out soon enough. Not that I was worried though. I knew we could roll with whatever was out there. As I learned back on my island, when the world changes, you've got to change with it. And I had, every time. The first change had gotten me into means to make the shield in my left hand. And the most recent world morph had gotten me the crossbow now clutched in my right hand. I'd grown to really dig this new weapon, and to prefer it over the older stand-up bow. First, I could leave it clocked, which meant no straining or slowing my pace to drop. Second, and more important for me, it wasn't a rapid-fire weapon. That might sound like a disadvantage, but at this point I was running out of arrows. Why not just make more? Fair question, especially if you haven't found the last 2 books I'd left behind for other lost adventurers. But just know that I don't kill animals for food anymore. I'd been too guilt-ridden since slaughtering my chicken flock back on the island. I tried not to think about it at that time, but recently I couldn't help it. My original supply of arrows was running out, and as you might know, or might not, if you're new to this world, arrows can't be made without chicken feathers. What would I do? Start killing birds again? Or share feathers from summer's kills? I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to compromise an ideal in order to save it. But I wasn't ready to make that particular compromise just yet. Conserving arrows with a crossbow would, hopefully, buy me enough time to make up my mind. And I hope you aren't too annoyed with me pulling you out of the story to go off on what seemed to be a totally random tangent. Trust me, it's not. Just like I did, you'll see how important this moral quandary will be later. But that morning, all that mattered were the dangers right in front of us. And fortunately, there weren't any. No new mobs, no new plants or animals, and thankfully, no old threats like a carpet of thin, please fall through me, quick snow. We reached the igloo where I'd first met Summer without incident, then continued on into the forest that bordered the white waste. We stopped at the sweet berry bushes, which had appeared after the last change, and had a quick, flavorful snack. We'd brought plenty of food with us, but as a general rule, it was always better to live off the island when possible. Personally, I was glad that Summer filled her belly with berries, because otherwise she might have turned her hunger on the next food source that ambled by. Moo. Cows. The herd I'd met before, just like my best friend Moo from the island. Yes, maybe it wasn't very original naming my mooing friend Moo, but Summer had named me Guy because I'm a guy. Simple, yeah, but meaningful, just like when I'd named Summer after a warm summer breeze laugh. And those are just first names. Just wait until later in the story, when we dig into some people getting their last names. But that's not for a while. Right now, what mattered were the cows in front of us and the other animals behind them. Bah. Hey flock, I said to the sheep. Been a while. I was pleased to see that they were all here, including Chippy, the brown lamb I helped spawn by feeding his parents when first meeting them. Fewer sheep would have meant more wolves, since we'd eliminated the original pack a while ago. I was happy to see the new changes hadn't brought more. Okay, side note. I know you're not supposed to mess with the balance of nature, right? Take out animal A that eats animal B, and soon animal B has multiplied out of control. But that's in our world, right? Here, the fact that this herd hadn't grown on their own showed that I'd actually preserved the balance by removing the predators. No need to thank me, I said to Chip, and I'm glad that there aren't new changes to the wildlife around here. I looked up as a white fox skittered past. I was thinking, since we already have polar bears, this world's next change might give us grizzly bears? Or what are those mythical ape creatures that are supposed to lurk in the woods? Yetis or Bigfoot? Don't be so paranoid, Summer scolded between berry bites. Just waiting for the other shoe to drop, I replied, then let out a snorting giggle. Get it? Bigfoot? Shoe? Everyone just looked at me. Summer, cows, and sheep. Tough room, I said with a shrug, which I guess is our cue to keep going. Just a moment, Summer interjected and turned to climb a small hill. Where are you going? I shouted up to her, waving my hands at her back. We're burning daylight. Won't be long, she called over her shoulder. I was about to keep pressing, wondering why she'd taken this sudden detour, but then I noticed the snow had stopped. And as she reached the top of the hill, I realized what she was up to. Summer was looking behind us in the direction of her mountain and moving slightly back and forth. It's a weird quirk of this world that faraway objects are always obscured by mist. 1 minute, you don't see a thing, and then just a step forward, it's suddenly there. That's what Summer was doing, crossing and retreating over the exact line where her mountain disappeared. She's saying goodbye, I told Chippy. Like in the one book, or books, or maybe it was a movie, because I distinctly remember how crazy talented the actor was in that scene. Bah? Asked the brown little sheep. Oh, right, I replied. You probably hadn't seen it. It's a magical fantasy about little people going on a big adventure. And in this early scene, that brilliant actor says something like, if I take one more step, it'll be the furthest from home I'd ever been. Bah. Yeah, I guess it's not exactly like what Summer's going through, I told Chip. She isn't technically leaving her home so much as setting off for her real one. But that mountains meant everything to her. She hollowed it out, furnished it, gave it heat and light. It's kept her alive and safe for so long. And now she's leaving it all behind. Bah. Chip's retort clinched my stomach. What do you mean, if she leaves it all behind? She's coming with me. She agreed. Bah. I sighed. Good point. I did keep making up reasons not to leave my island, and when I did, I almost turned my boat around and headed right back. And now that I think about it, Summer and I almost ended our friendship because she was too scared to leave her comfort zone. I looked up at my friend, alone on the hill, eyes fixed on the east, on the past. I gotta go talk to her, I told Chip. Make sure she doesn't get cold feet. Remind her that growth doesn't come from a comfort zone, but from leaving it. Moo! That was a cow, butting in on our conversation. Who asked you? I snapped defensively. And what am I supposed to do? Just let her back out now? Moo, insisted the cow, sounding just like my island friend Moo, and just as wise. You're right, I grunted. Friends respect each other's life choices. I turned away from the hill, giving Summer a true moment alone. The only way she was able to leave was because she made the decision on her own, and that's the only way she's going to be able to keep going. Her life, her choice. Well, that's comforting. What oh hi, I spun to face Summer. I was just, Yes, I know, she said flatly. I could hear your entire conversation from up there. And yes, I was saying goodbye. Oh, well, I stammered. Come on then, she chirped, marching into the woods. We should really reach the other Tiga before dark. Oh, yeah, totally, I mumbled in tow. And Guy, she said, without looking back. Thank you. I didn't respond. I knew she needed silence. Summer's not big on the whole bare your soul kind of thing, which I totally understood when first hearing about how she started on this world. Like I wrote in the last book, I don't know if I would have survived, spawning in on the frozen taiga, living on zombie flesh, without a milk chaser, and having to fight every day just to get through to the next one. She didn't have the luxury of feelings. She'd had to shellac her heart with a thick coat of toughness. So I didn't press, didn't prod, didn't try to get her to talk about how she was feeling. I was just relieved that she was coming with me. And that relief evaporated just a few minutes later. We can't go on. We were almost at the end of the forest. She was a little ahead of me, standing at the top of a shallow ridge. What? Why? The words came out in a high, frizzly yap. I couldn't control myself this time. I thought we settled it. Why had she changed her mind so quickly? Look for yourself, she said with a beckoning, blocky arm. I scrambled up next to her and saw that it was the world, not her mind, that had changed. The next taiga was gone, replaced by a barrier of high hills. We stared for a moment. silently awed by the steep slopes dotted with dark spruce trees and bright patches of snowblocks. No luck making it across before dark, mused Summer. Then, looking around for the best location to bed down, asked, "What do you think? Igloo or cave?" "How about a log cabin?" I suggested. "It's comfier, would make a better landmark for any possible travelers coming up behind us," and I opened my arms to the trees around us. We agreed to stretch our pack loads with the resources around us, right? I was referring to our long-term strategy of living off the land whenever possible, because even though we carried everything from food to tools to extra supplies, like torches and blaze rods, there was no telling when our finite inventory would run out. "Couldn't agree more," said Summer, nodding, then reached for the latest addition to this ever-changing world, her netherite axe. It was a new material, or alloy? Isn't that the right word? Mixing different metals into one? That's what we did with gold ingots and scraps of this mysterious ore from the nether. Following the instructions in the book we'd found in another bastion, we learned how to make a smithing table to combine the netherite scraps with Summer's diamond axe. The result was a tool that let her harvest wood like a machine. "Should have all we need in a jiffy," she called over the sound of chopping trees. "So why don't you get to work on our chimney?" Now it was my turn to use another souped up tool. It was the enchanted pickaxe I'd found in the same fortress as the netherite. Not only was it as fast and efficient as Summer's axe, its shimmering sheen hinted that, somehow, it was possible either to find more enchanted items or maybe stumble on a way to enchant them myself. Either possibility would have to wait for a later date. Right now, I was just grateful for how quickly and easily it tore through the stone of a nearby hill. About a minute later, I had more than enough cobblestone for the cabin's chimney. "Not bad," said Summer, placing the first layer of our 7x9 walls. "We should have the rest up in no time." And we did. First the walls, then the single door, then the shallow angled roof of spruce planks. "I'm gonna hunt for some sand," I said, as we fixed the last few planks into place. "You know, for window glass." "I'll give that a miss if I were you," Summer argued. "Not the safest move so close to sunset." "Safety's what I'm thinking about," I countered, "cause if we're shut up in this wooden box with no way to see out, how are we gonna know that there isn't a creeper waiting for us tomorrow morning?" Summer considered this silently, then asked, "What about trapdoor windows?" I didn't get it. "Using trapdoors in window frames," Summer explained. "Just flip them up to keep out the cold and down whenever you want to see out." "That's a good idea," I nodded, then, as the idea churned, said, "No, like a really good idea." "Thank you." Summer climbed down the ladder we'd fixed to the outside of the chimney and, with me in tow, went back into her nearly finished cabin to get to work on the windows. "You've got me thinking," I said, cutting out the window frames. "Oh, really?" Summer mocked. "You thinking?" "Haha," I flat laughed. "But seriously, what we're doing with these windows, using something old to make something new, plus these sudden hills, it's all got me thinking about how the world change might mean new items." "Possible," Summer answered, fixing the trapdoor windows in place, and as soon as we have time, I looked forward to experimenting. "Don't we have time now?" I set a netherite cube in the fireplace, ignited it with my flint and steel, then stood closer to chase away the chill. And wow, were those chills chilly. This world might not let you freeze to death, but the tight muscles, stinking eyes, chattering teeth, and burning numbness in my ears, nose, and fingers were definitely not fun. "Ugh," I groaned as the flames shook the last frosty bolts from my spine. "The cabin's done. The sun is setting. There's nothing left to do." "Except sleep." Summer placed her bed against one of the side walls. "I don't know about you, but I do not plan on tackling that ruddy great incline tomorrow without a proper rest." No argument there, I conceded, and placed my own bed opposite hers. "Night, Guy," she said, slipping between her blankets. "Night, Summer," I replied, preparing to rest my head. Only I didn't. I couldn't. It was just too tantalizing to think about the new crafting combos. And for that matter, what about the other 2 world changes for this one? Neither of us had done any experimenting those times. There'd been too many tasks and challenges before leaving. But now, just a few tries. I silently promised the crafting table, laying down materials as Summer blissfully snored behind me. Maybe I can finally craft a sweater or even a long sleeve shirt. Just 1 or 2 random mashups before turning in. Yeah, right. 5 minutes later, and more than a few dozen mashups later, I let out a whoa that should have, but didn't, wake the sleeping Summer. It was a simple combination, a collection of sticks, logs, and coal, but mixed up together, that made one of humanity's earliest achievements. A campfire. Like torches, it was cool and dormant when carried, but set in the fireplace, it blazed to life. And like torches, this fire never died. Warm and bright and smelling so much better than the, well, shall we say, bathroomy odor of burning netherrack. Summer, I called, check this out. She didn't stir. I thought about shaking her awake, if this world will let me do that, or even going as far as chopping up the bed beneath her. She'd be mad, no doubt, but this breakthrough was too important not to share. Or was it? Did a campfire mean that there were more inventions waiting to be discovered? Or was it just an old puzzle we hadn't been lucky enough to unlock before now? There must be more, I told my sleeping friend. I just gotta keep trying. Which I did, and while I'd love to tell you, that night yielded amazing discoveries like ray guns or jetpacks, what I really got were just a series of new workstations that, for the most part, didn't seem immediately useful. Some looked like different versions of what I already had. A square, barrel-looking version of a storage chest, a stone version of an anvil, and a super-powered furnace, which I got by placing an original furnace on a crafting table and surrounding it with iron ingots and smooth, double-cooked stone on the bottom. Others looked like slight upgrades to what I'd already built, like a workbench that combined wool and dye into various spanner things, and a stone table with a circular saw that could shape stone into fancier stone. Nice, nice, I ho-hummed, reciting a line from a movie that I watched once. Not thrilling, but nice. I kept going, throwing everything I had on the crafting table, and came up with 2 more workbenches that I couldn't do anything with. The first seemed like another storage bin, but without a lid, and without the ability to store anything, while the second one looked like a crafting table, but with bow, arrows, and targets instead of the usual tools. Okay, time out. If you've been living in this world for a while, you already know how to use all these specialized appliances. Good for you, but cut me some slack, okay? It's not like I had a library to walk me through everything. It was trial and error, or by this point, it felt like a trial of errors. I was ready to call it quits and admit to Summer that all my efforts had landed me somewhere between whatever and come on man, when my last blend of wood and paper got me what only could be a map table. Not only could it expand an existing map with only 1 more sheet of paper, I could now finally make a copy. This was huge, especially for other castaways like you. Chances are, if you're reading this book, it's because you found it by copied maps we'd been leaving along the way. Not bad, I hummed. Not a bad night's work. Well, you've been busy. I spun to see Summer holding up a cube fist, gesturing to the room full of new items. And you have to tell me about all these wonderful new concoctions later. She walked over to one of the windows and flipped down the trapdoor. But for now, let's yomp up these hills. I didn't realize it was morning already. I'd been too distracted to hear the dawn-burning zombies, this world's version of roosters. Yeah, totally, I said, slipping the map copy into that barrel box. Let's roll. I was a little sleepy, I admit, but the morning's chill woke me right up. We left our cozy little cabin and started up the rugged slope. It was slow going, and not just because of the terrain. Forests at dawn are always dangerous. Too much shade, too many hiding mobs. We climbed slowly, cautiously, and with weapons at the ready. We didn't know it yet, but there was a whole new threat out there, and it had nothing to do with mobs. Just before reaching the summit, I smelled something odd but familiar. Odd because it had no business floating through this dry, icy wind, and familiar because I'd first smelled it on the support beams in Summer's kitchen. It was pungent. Leather. That wood, I started to say, and held my nose to the air. I smell it too, Summer confirmed. Just a few more steps. As my eyes poked above the summit, my square jaw fell practically to my knees. Massive trees, 4 blocks thick, towered above a canopy of shorter siblings. Vines, yes, they had to be vines, grew up their skyscraper trunks or else fell in webbed curtains from brilliant green foliage. Yes, Summer answered my unspoken question. That's the jungle. I couldn't wait to explore it, to finally leave this teeth-chattering, nose-stinging, permafrosty shiverfest of a climate way behind me. Let's go, I called and took off down the slope. I thought I was being careful. I made a point of looking for mobs. I even mentally patted myself on the back for choosing an open path of clear, bright, slightly more powdery snow. 1 step. That's all it took. I fell. Not through the snow, but into it. I was engulfed, chilled, choking. I looked back up for Summer, but couldn't see anything beyond white, darkening, closing in. My vision was tunneling. What was happening to me? I couldn't be. No, this world's cold is just a discomfort. It can't be. Panic. Drowning my thoughts as the frozen water drowned my body. I thrashed, punched, yelled for Summer. I fought to breathe, to move. I kicked, trying to jump, climb, swim back to the surface. The shivering up my spine, across my chest, shook me like an invisible hand. I could feel the cold penetrating my lungs, gripping my heart. Then suddenly, it was gone. I was warm? How? Was this special snow? Did you just have to push through the initial chill to get this nice warming calm? Because I did feel calm now, and slightly drowsy. I didn't want to fight anymore. Didn't want to do anything but sleep. It was a wonderful feeling, like being wrapped up in a soothing, pale, safe blanket. Just a quick nap, just a few minutes to wrap myself up in this wonderful peace. That's what I was thinking. But I wasn't thinking, not really. I couldn't. My mind was numb, shutting down, incapable of warning me that I was freezing to death. End of chapter 1.